Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. I am Mr. Kadim Khan and I am a lecturer in the Institute of Computing, Kuwait University of Science and Technology. Today we will take lecture number 19 of the subject of software quality engineering, in which we are going to discuss the software test documentation. Dear students, this section is very much important because we need a lot of documentation during the testing. So documentation is used to keep record of different sort of tests. So in this lecture, we are thoroughly discussing software test documentations. This is the discussion agenda. It contains the topics of test documentation. In the test documentation, we will define why the test documentation is very much important. Then we have IEEE standard 8 to 9 for software test documentation. Then we have the relationship of test documentation to test process. This is very much important because here you will find that different documents that are required for testing purpose. Here the IEEE 8 to 9 format will be used. Then we have test case specification templates. Here we will define how we can design the test case and what will be the important sections of this test case. And here is the examples of the test case. You can take help from this example for your final year projects, and it will be very much useful for you. Then we have the IEEE 8 to 9 test plan templates. In the test plan template, we define that how the testing is planned, and that is the IEEE 8 to 9 test plan. Then we have the overall structure of the status reports. The status report is about the testing reports. Then we have the common report structure. The common report means that the full report, which is in fact common for all certain documents. And then we have the defect report form. Here we will in fact investigate what types of defects is occurring, their history and complete information about the defects. And at the end we have the overall test reports. Now, what is the test documentation? Basically, maintaining proper documentation is important aspects of any testing effort. So we must have to maintain proper documentation of the test activities because the documentations gives us a complete insight into a certain test activities, that what is going on and how it is conducting and what is the results of the testing. So the purpose of documentation is the plan and guide testing activities. Here all the testing activities will be in fact planned, and then that plan help us to perform the different testing activities. Then we have report on test progress. So this documents will in fact provide us complete progress about the testing that is going on. Then we have the use to assess the product quality and to achieve the conformance with the standards and regulations. So here we will identify different sort of the standards and regulations that are used to produce the product quality. So these standards and regulations will be the IEEE standards and regulations. Now serve as a management decision making tools. Basically all the documentation serve as a management decision tool. So by this means that the manager can take different decisions based on these documentations. Various test documentation templates are standards and are available. So we have already standard documentations, and the standard is the IEEE standards. So IEEE is an important computer science in fact standards. So that's why we will use the IEEE standards that is widely used. So maintaining main issue is to consider that the cost of maintaining such documentation which should be weighted against the product requirements. So sometimes the cost of maintaining this documentation is very high. So hence we have to weight it against the product requirements. If the product is very much small, so these documentation are not much necessary to be maintained. But if the product is very much complex, such as a CAD and CAM application, so these documentations are very much required. Now, IEEE standard 8 to 9 for software test documentation. Basically, IEEE standards, that is Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineering, has defined the standard 8 to 9 for software test documentations. So this is the initially published in 1983 and later approved by American National Standard Institute ANSI. So ANSI has approved this documentation which is published in 1983 and that documentation standard is called 829 IEEE standards and it contains many documentation and the most important are the test plans, then we have the test design specification, then we have test case specification, then we have test procedure specification, test item transmitter reports, test logs, test incident report, and test summary. So in the test plan, we will plan the complete testing process here, that how we will test the software, what resources are required to test the software, what will be the schedule of testing, and what should be the intended software that will be required to test with their complete test cases. Then we have test design specification. Here we will design all the specification of the testing that is required for us. Then we have test case specification. In the test case specification, we will have a complete test cases to be specified. Then we have test procedural specification. In the test procedural specification, we will test that what sort of the procedure is required to test the documentation, that is the procedure by means that the techniques required to conduct the testing. Then we have the test item transmitted report. In the test item transmitted report, we mean that the functionality or the component or the module or the product that is required to be tested, its transmittal report, that what is the result of the testing. Next, we have test logs. Test logs is automatically created by the testing tools. It contains all the information about the testing. Then we have test incident reports. Test incident reports contain certain problems that arise during the testing. So if there are certain problems that arise during the testing, then we will document all these issues in the test incident reports. And at the end, we have the test summary reports. It contains a brief summary about the full testing process. Now, this is the relationship of the test documents to testing process. So all these that is the blue symbols are in fact the test documents. These are certain documents. While there you can see these are another documents and another activities. For example, project documentation. The project documentation may be the SRS or the design documents. And item documentation. The item documentation is the documentation about the certain item or functionalities. So all these two are used for the test plan. In the test plan, we will plan the testing, including the resources required to test the software and the schedule required to test the software. From the test plan, we create test design specs. Test design specification means that here we will design the full specification. It will be just a rough design, not the actual test cases, and the actual test cases will be in the test case specification. Here we will design the complete test cases. In the next slides, you will see the test cases. So in the test cases, we have the input-output functionalities of the software and the expected results and the actual results. Then from these two, that is from the test case specification and test design specification, we create test procedural specification. In this document, we will specify complete methodology required to test the software systems. And next, all this information will be act as an input for test execution. But test execution also required test item transmittal reports. So all these items that are required to be tested are in the item transmittal reports, and which is in fact from the test items. So all the items that are required to be tested are in fact documented in the test item transmittal report. And test item transmittal report and test procedural specification both act as an input for the test execution. So here the test execution required two inputs and it also creates two different outputs. So after test executing, that is the execution of the test or the conducting of the test, then we have test incidental reports. In the test incidental report, We will in fact document all certain issues or problems that arise or incidents that may arise during the test. And then also we have the test logs. The test logs is a certain software testing systems which gives us the log or the information about the testing. And at the end we have test summary report. In the test summary report we have brief summary about the testing process. Now, this is the method of the test cases. In the test cases, first we have the build number. Build number is the execution number. Next is the tester name. The tester name is the person who will test the softwares or who is responsible for performing the test. Next, we have test type. In the test type, we specify the type of or the kind of test that has been performed. For example, black box tests, white box tests, unit testing, integration testing. All this can be documented for such product here. Then we have test case name. In the test case name, we specify the name of the test. That what is the name of that particular test here. Then we have test case number. Here we will specify the number or the unique identifier of the testing. Next, we have test case description. The test case description means that the brief or the description in a few sentences here that what we are going to test, what is the intent of the testing, and what should be the actual the result of the testing. Then we have item to be tested. The items are here described in a certain chronological order. All these items are mentioned here. Then we have specification input and expected output. Here by the input we mean that what is the input to the software during the testing and what is the expected output of the software after the testing. Then we have the procedural steps. In the procedural steps we have a certain procedure required to conduct the testing. That what is the procedure of the testing, that is the methodology used to perform the testing. Now this is the sample test case here. So you can see that this is the build number. By build number is a certain execution number. And then tester name. Tester name is the name of the person who is performing the test. And that test type, that is the unit test. Then we have test case name. Test case name means test get author. So this is the unit that we are going to test get author. Test case number, here is the test case number. For example, if we are performing more than one test case for this particular unit, then we have multiple numbers. Here for example, this is test case number 1, test number 2, test case number 14, etc. Test case specification, here we will specify the complete testing, that is what we are going to test and what should be the in fact the documents that is required to test the software. So testing that the get author method of the class patent.java retrieve the patient's author's names for a patient document. Then we have the items to be tested. By the item to be tested, we means that the certain items that are required to test the softwares. That is different items that are required to be tested here. Then we have the specification. Specification means that input and output. So for example, if we are providing input wild, then the output should be author's name as a string which is entered with the set author function or null if name not set yet. So for example, if the name is not provided, that means empty input is provided, then the author's name string which is entered with the set name function are null if name not set yet, means that when the name is not set yet, then it will provide us null value. Then we have the procedural steps. The procedure create a new patient.java.instance, call method getAuthor and ensures that return value is null. Call setAuthor name of authors followed by getAuthor and ensure that the names of the authors are the same. So it means that this is a complete procedure during the testing. Now here is also IEEE 829 test plan templates. Here we will plan the testing. In the planning testing, we have first of all the introduction. The introduction specifies the brief introduction about the testing. Then test items, item required to be tested, feature to be tested, number of features that is required to be tested, features not to be tested, that those features which we should not test, and then approaches code inspection, unit testing, system testing, regression testing, acceptance testing. So all these tests will be specified here, different types of tests. Item pass fail criteria, that is when the items is passed means that item is accepted or rejected. So we will specify different criteria here. On that criteria we will specify that this item is accepted and this one is rejected. Then we have the suspension criteria and resumption requirements. Here's when we want to suspend or resume the testings, and what is the requirement required to be suspend or resume, that is to resume the testing. Then we have test deliverables. Test deliverable is the result of the testings at the end. Testing task, different activities required to perform the testings. Environmental needs, the different resources required during the testing, that is the environmental needs of the software testing. Responsibilities include different sort of the people required to perform the testing. In staffing and training needs also means that different people and their training required for software testing. Schedule means time required to complete the testings, and risk and contingencies mean different sort of the factors that can affect the testing process and their the effectiveness or their catastrophic situations. Approvals means that different approval that is required to approve the software system. To-do list means that in fact it is the to-do list. In the to-do list we have the revision history. Revision history means that the previous testing or previous test that has been done in the past, all these histories provided here. Now, in the overall structures, we have here is the one structure that the sum manager finds works well for them, and the report has four parts. Each part starts as a separate page. So, for example, risk and responsibilities is one part, process against the plan is another part, process bugs matrix is another, and deferred and no fixed bugs to approve is another part. So we have four different parts here, and each part has a separate page here. That means that each part should be documented in a single page or a separate number of pages. Now, overall structure of test reports has first part called risk and responsibility. Here we will identify the current problem such as artifacts due into testing but not arrived. For example, different components that are required during the testing but they are not provided at the time. Artifacts that due out of testing but not yet completed, and those components which are due and they are still incomplete, say staff turnover that threatens the schedules. For example, if certain staff is not coming for the process of testing, and for example there is certain issues like they are ill, there is the certain strikes, and there are certain political disturbance or the war situation or something like that, natural disasters like flooding. So we will all specify it here. And equipment acquisition problem that might threaten the schedules here, that different equipments and their acquisition problems which may delay the testing process. This is the progress against the plans. That means that the progress of the testing with respect to the plans here. It has the following table. For example, here we will document different components. Test types. Type is the unit test, integration test, etc. And tester. Tester is the person names. Here we will specify total test planned created. Different tests that are planned and then they are created. Here we will document all these. Test passed, failed, blocked. The test that has been passed or failed or blocked, here we specify that. Here time required to complete the test and time spent, actual times and required planned times we will specify here. Project effort for the next build, that is the people or the effort or the number of hours required for the next builds. And here we will have the notes. The notes means specification or details about this activity. So here, how this cover the progress against the plan, risk, obstacles, efforts, and result all in one chart. So there is the risk, obstacle, efforts, and result all are covered here in the one chart here. Next part is the project bug matrix. In the project bug matrix, we have the certain measurement techniques that measures the different bugs that occur during the projects are occur by in the products. So these charts shows to find and fix rates over the course of the project. So this is very much useful because it gives us the rate at which the problems are being repaired. In fact, these different problems that are being repaired. So if the repair rate, the end of the project is slow compared to the find rate, the schedule is at the risk. So it means that maybe the schedule may be slip or they become the schedule become long, because if the if the repair rate of the project is low as compared to the find rate, then that means that project schedule will be disturbed. Now, the overall structure of the common report is in fact a graphical representation of the bugs per weeks with respect to the weeks. For example, number of bugs that are in fact reported per weeks and number of weeks that are going on. This can be in fact here generated in the graph here. So bugs counts and extents of the testing. That means that attempts to measure the testing process by plotting the project's bugs numbers against the theoretical curve of the expected find rates over the time. So that means the bugs numbers are identified with respect to the times. So here we will see that how is the testing is effective. If we are identifying more bugs with respect to the time, that means that the testing is very much effective. Next part is number 4, deferred and no change approval request. So here we can say that the testing is deferred and there is no change approval in the request. That is the customer has not provided any request for the changes. So every project team fixes some bugs and rejects or deferred other. So at that point, there must be a management review of the collection of problems that will not be fixed. So sometimes there are certain problems or errors or bugs that are very much complex and they cannot be fixed at that particular time. So here the manager must have to identify that bugs. So that is in fact the to save up the list of the end of the project, list the new not to be fixed change request every week. So that's why every weeks we have to identify certain bugs that are called the not to be fixed are change requests. So here are certain bugs that cannot be fixed here. Now test report form. This is the test report form here. This is also IEEE form here. So here first of all we have the software system being tested. Here we will specify the name of software being tested. Next is the date. The date is the date on which the test should be occurred. Next is the defects found names types. Here we will identify the name and type of a single defects found in the software being tested. Next one is location found, that is unit or modules. Here individual units are system modules in which the defects was found. Next one is the severity of the defects. Here that means whether the defects is critical, minor or major. So critical means that the system cannot run without correction, while the major means that the defects will impact the accuracy of the operation, and the minor means that it will not impact the operations. Okay, next is the types of defects. So types of defects mean that whether the defects represent something missing, wrong, or something extra. So the defects is something missing that may be either wrong or maybe something extra defect. Then we have the test date script location. Um, so here we have certain the defects are the test which was used to uncover the defects. So here we are identified different tests which are used to uncover or to identify the defects. Then we have the origin of the defects phase of the development. So here we will identify the phase in which the defects occur. Here we have the date corrected. Here we will specify the date of the corrections in the module after testing. So then we have the retest dates after correcting the modules. Then we have the retest dates of the system. So and at the end we have the result of the test retest. So whether the software system function correctly or not, and the defects no longer exist, or if the additional correction and testing will be required here. Now, the overall test reports are produced regularly during the test process, so we must have to regenerate the test reports regularly during the testing. After each test, that report should be in fact updated. And at the end of the process, the overall test reports should have a summarize and analysis of the result, and that are produced as well. So at the end of the complete testing process, it contains all the test reports, including the summary and analysis of the results. Here is the overall test report. First, we have the scope. Scope contains the identifications of the systems. System overview, that means that complete system information. Document overview, that means that complete overview or the summary about the documents. Reference documents, other documents that are required here are also provided as a reference here. Overview of the test results. Here we will specify overview of all the results of the test, including overall assessment of the software tested. Here we will assess the software that is being tested and impact of testing environments. That means that whether testing is effective or not effective. And then we have recommended improvements. If there are certain drawbacks or certain, in fact, the limitations in the testing, we will recommend here that we have to retest the software on other technologies, etc. Here, detailed test results. Here, we will specify project unique identifier of a test, including summary of the test results, problem encounter, and problem unique identifier of test cases and deviation from test cases procedure. Here we will specify the complete detail of the test results. Then we have the test logs. In the test logs, we have a log that is in fact created automatically by the testing process, and it contains the complete history or information about the testing. Then we have the notes. Notes contains different abbreviation and acronyms that are used in this complete documentation. And at the end, we have the appendix, that is additional data which is required, for example, some references or other document information. Dear student, this is the end of the lectures. If you have any question, you can ask this question through the email. My email is m.kadim@kust20201.pk. I will wait for your questions and will respond immediately. These are two books if you want to study more about these topics. So you can study these books. These are very much important books. Thank you very much.